Thank you, and good afternoon, and welcome to this meeting of Barrowborough Council's Audit and Governance Committee. My name is Councillor Anne Burns, and I am the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. This is the first virtual Audit and Governance Committee to be conducted by the Council, so please bear with us. Officers and members have done some training on this, so hopefully it will go through reasonably well this afternoon, and we know we've got a very large agenda. May I first remind all of you that some of the domestic arrangements need to be put in place. It's important that participants conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. Please put your mobile phones on silent. Participants must ensure their microphones are muted throughout this meeting. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand via the raised hand facility in Zoom, and only unmute your microphone when you're invited to speak. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, i.e. their other Skypes or chat lines. If members do lose connections to the meeting, we will adjourn for up to 10 minutes to assist them in reconnecting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being broadcast live to the internet. While the whole meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential and exempt items. To vote on matters, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to manage this process. At this point, members will be requested to unmute their microphones, and after a brief pause, a mover and a seconder will be requested, and a roll call of members will be undertaken. Please reply when asked to that I vote for, against, or abstain, and then remute your microphones. The formalities are over. Now we're going to proceed with today's agenda. And the first item on the agenda is apologies. So I'll move over to the Democratic Services Officer to do the roll call. Sharon, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just confirm attendance, please? Councillor Burns.
Here.
Councillor Aswad.
Present.
Councillor Callister.
Present.
Councillor Ronson.
Present.
Councillor Shirley.
Present.
Councillor Thompson.
Present.
And officers, we've got Susan Roberts, Director of Resources.
Present.
Debbie Starr, Head of Legal and Governance.
Present.
Keith Jackson, Head of Internal Audit.
Present.
John Penfold, Corporate Support Manager.
Present.
Brooke Parsons, Corporate Support Officer.
Present.
Gareth Kelly, the External Auditor from Grant Thornton.
Present.
And Chris Whittingham from Grant Thornton External Audit.
Present.
Thank you, Chair. That's everyone.
Thank you. So agenda item 2, apologies for absence or substitute members, but I think we've got a full list of members present today, so we've got no substitutes. Is that correct, Sharon?
That's correct, Chair.
So agenda item 3 is to note any items which the Chair considers to be of an urgent nature, and I haven't heard any of any items. I think the agenda as we've published. Agenda item 4 are delegations. This is to receive notice from members who may wish to move any delegated matter non-delegated, and which will be decided by a majority of members present today and voting at the meeting. I haven't heard of anyone wanting to move such. So anybody? No. Okay, thank you. So agenda item 5 is admission of press and public. And I don't have any, the agenda is as it stands, but I will move that today, agenda item 26 and 27, move that these items be exempt from being in the press and public for reasons set out at the head of the paper. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, declarations of interest to receive declarations by members and or co-opted members of interest in respect of the agenda today. Any items on the agenda that members want to declare an interest? No. Thanks.
Got Councillor Shirley, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. Concerning item 26, wish to declare that I am on the committee of the Borough and District Junior Football League, Ascombe United Football Club. Also wish to declare that my father-in-law owns Escape Hotels on Lawson Street.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shirley, and they'll be recorded. So, move along then to agenda item 7, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting that were held on the 18th of December. Seems such a long time ago, folks. 2019, and just have your approval of those minutes.
Can we have a mover and seconder, Chair, please?
So can we have someone to move those minutes and then someone to second them, please?
I'll move them.
Councillor Assoud has moved them. And can we have a seconder, please?
Second the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Shirley, move those. Thank you very much. So, agenda item 8, public participation. Any members of the public who wishes to ask a question, make representation or present a deputation or petition at this meeting should apply to do so. Well, I don't think we've received any representation or any questions for this meeting today. Thank you.
No, we haven't, Chair.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda for decisions for the committee is agenda item 9, which are the terms of reference for this committee. And I'll hand that over to Sue Roberts, our Director of Resources. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is our terms of reference. First thing I would just like to mention is we are now the Audit and Governance Committee. Previous meetings were held as Audit Committee, but we have got through the there was a governance review and a constitution review. The term Audit and Governance is felt to fit this committee's remit much better. This report's bringing the terms of reference they brought at the start of each sort of year's business to remind members exactly what the committee purposes are. The appendix is just lifted straight from the constitution, which was agreed quite recently, so members will be aware of the content. So I wasn't going to kind of step through it all. The members will note there's a couple of extra items in the regulatory and standards section. They are items delegated to the monitoring officer, but do fall in the remit of the audit committee. This item does link into the next item about the work plan, so I'll leave it as that for now. It is just to note the terms of reference.
Sorry, Chair, you're muted.
Sorry. Any member wish to ask a question on the terms of reference? If not, then I will move to number 2 on there. It's recommended that the Audit and Governance Committee note the terms of reference. Are members agreeing to that today? Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is, as Sue said, the work plan, agenda item 10. Mrs. Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this is the work plan which comes to every meeting and sets out the business of the committee, but also the timing of how that will flow into reports throughout the year. It is at the moment the plan we've seen at each meeting for a number of years now. Members will note there's some repeat, so there's some business in July that is also in March, and that's just because of the compression of time between the meetings, and also that we've got a movement of the statement of accounts work, so that's going to move into now and the next couple of meetings, but we'll start again in March when it gets onto its normal kind of work pattern. So there is some duplication, but it is only temporary. It does need to be updated, I would say, to mirror the terms of reference. Some of the terminology is a little bit away from what it should be, but I intend to do a more thorough review alongside the head of legal and governance, because we want to draw out more of the regulatory and standards business that will come to audit committee in the future. So this current plan is brought every quarter, and it is for noting, but it will probably look slightly different next time members see it.
Sorry, Chair, you're muted again.
Sorry. Any questions from members on that work plan? If not, can we then agree the recommendations in the paper that we agree the work plan going forward?
Chair, can we have a mover and a seconder, please? And then we can agree on consensus should no hands be raised.
Can we
Move it. I'll move it.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson's moved it. Councillor Stewart?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And can we have a raised hands for consensus from the meeting? All of us? Thank you. Okay, that's fine. So, agenda item 11, internal audit, and I'll call on the head of internal audit, Keith Jackson, to move the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll briefly review each of the reports in the pack, starting on page 27 with review of the Council's IT infrastructure management. Pleased to say that this had substantial assurance. We had just one important recommendation. This related to the checking of the actual assets, the IT assets, to the Council's IT asset register. Currently, there isn't a formal plan in place for this activity. There were two minor recommendations, firstly relating to the monitoring of the capacity of the Council's IT systems, and finally the recommendation was to formalising the change control arrangements where we had non-significant changes. So we're quite happy with that, Chair. No further comments to make.
Thank you.
I'll just carry on going through the reports, Chair. So 1902 is a review of the housing benefit system. Again, we were awarded this substantial assurance. There were two important issues within this report. The first, looking at changes to benefit claimant circumstances, ensuring these are processed on a timely basis. We identified two cases within the sample where these had exceeded the 14-day requirement. The second recommendation related to the backdating of award for claimants, and there was one case within the sample which we found had not been backdated to the maximum period of 1 month. The minor issues, Chair, were processing recommendations, so I won't provide any further information. Moving on to report 1903, the Council Tax and Council Tax Support Review. Again, substantial assurance. There were, however, 4 important issues and one minor issue. There were 2 previous recommendations, Chair, also from this report. The first 3 important recommendations really all relate to a lack of formal reconciliation and verification. So this is really just formalising the controls that are in place. The fourth recommendation relating to council tax support is being determined on a timely basis. We found with 2 cases within the sample that had gone beyond the 14-day requirement. As I say, Chair, there were two previous recommendations as well, which I won't go into. I'll just highlight the fact that those are outstanding. On page 33, report 1904, the non-domestic rates or business rates review. Again, substantial assurance with just 1 important issue and 3 minor issues. The important issue is similar to the council tax review. It was a lack of formal verification and reconciliation. And the 3 minor issues were processing concerns that we've raised. And there was just the 1 previous recommendation from our work historically. On page 35 of your pack, report 1910, budgetary control. Pleased to say this was unqualified assurance with no recommendations to be made, Chair. And report 1911 relates to review the Treasury Management System. Substantial assurance with just 1 important issue. This related to ensuring the Treasury management policies, procedures, etc. were kept up to date. This is probably of more importance as the officer in question is now retired from the council, so we need to see that this has been maintained. I'm happy to take any questions on those reports, Chair, as I've gone through them.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Members, any questions for the head of internal audit on this agenda item? If not,
There's no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. Could I have then a mover and a seconder for accepting to note this report?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Sood. And somebody second, please.
Seconded.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. And we'll move on to then agenda item 12, sorry. So internal audit internal audit progress report. Thank you. Would you like to present your report?
Thank you, Chair. The progress report here relates to the period April to March 2020. So this is obviously the final report for the last quarter of that particular financial year, and would have been presented in the March Audit Committee if that meeting had gone ahead. It's really reported here for completeness, Chair, because we do have an annual report that covers more formal issues for the Internal Audit Service. I will very quickly go through this particular report, but there will be some repetition between this and the annual report because effectively they're covering the same period. So just on page, well, your page 44, page 4 of the actual report, just to highlight that the vast majority of recommendations that we made within the period have been accepted. There were no recommendations that were actually rejected. On page 5, we would refer to any priority 1 recommendations that we've made within the period here. However, members will see that these such reports have now been included in part 2 of the agenda papers, and we'll cover them later in the meeting. Just on section 4, which starts on page 7 of the papers, this obviously covers the progress of the work against the internal audit plan. This is repeated within the annual report. The main thing just to really highlight, Chair, is there's 1 or 2 areas of work that we've had to carry forward due to the current situation, which I think is understandable. On page 9, section 5, you will see the volume of contract audit work that's been either concluded or undertaken within the period. And on page 11, just a statistic that you tend to refer to, Chair, with 88% of the management responses being received. That's an improvement. So we have had an improving figure as the years progressed. And nothing further really to say, Chair, against this particular report.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Can I just say that I think the staff have done a remarkable job with the way that we've actually had to cope with the extra funding coming in to making sure that we monitor that. So, you know, I think the committee would like to say to internal audit, all of the work that they've been carried out, thank you very much for the work that you've done. So it's remarkable the work that has been extra on the job that you've needed to do. So thank you for that. So members, this is an agenda item 12. It's recommended that we note this progress report. Could I have someone to move that and then second it? Thank you. Councillor. Thank you. Councillor.
Sorry, who moved that? Councillor Aswad. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then moving on then to the internal audit annual report, and Councillor Mrs. Roberts, you're going to be moving. Are you going to be speaking to this as the officer? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, this one is for the head of internal audit. I'm going to pick up the next report. Apologies.
Right. Thank you. Sorry.
Hi. Sorry, Chair, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know whether my email connection just froze. I don't know whether I was the only one, but I've only just been able to connect back into the meeting. So item 13, the internal annual report for the financial year 1920. And the purpose of this report is to meet the head of the internal audit annual reporting requirements in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards. This report is produced every year at the first audit committee. At the bottom of page 2 of the report, we have referred to our quality assurance processes, and here we're confirming that these have been consistently maintained throughout the financial year in question. At the bottom of page 3 of the report, and one of the main items is the year opinion. And the detailed opinion here is that for the systems reviewed, the council has basically sound systems of control in place, although we identified weaknesses which put some of these systems at risk. is mainly related to areas of contract management, which I would expect the members to be aware of, and leasing procurement, and also certain areas within community services. We're highlighting a number of areas here where restricted assurance and no assurance have been assigned to particular pieces of work. Some of these are going to be covered within part 2 of this particular meeting. Moving on to page 7 of the report, we report the percentage of coverage, both from systems and also from a risk perspective. You will notice that the percentages we've achieved are slightly lower than planned, but again, this is because of the current situation, nothing that we wouldn't expect. On page 8 of the report, we summarise the fraud hotline statistics in terms of the calls that we've received. This is effectively the whistleblowing facility that is provided either by a telephone or the use of web forms. The statistics are fairly similar between the 2 years in comparison, and I think this demonstrates that the facility is still fairly well used, and we should continue to maintain it as a good example of transparency, Chair. And moving over to page 10 of the report, section 4.2, looking at the recommendations made, we have a comparison between the 2 years, 1920 and 1819. You will notice that there's probably less recommendations made within the current year in question. However, we have an increased number of priority 1 recommendations. So a positive message, but maybe some slightly negative points as well, Chair. In terms of the follow-up of recommendations, Chair, we report the specific statistics of these annually. You'll see that there are still a small number of recommendations that we need to progress within the year 2020-21. We'll undertake this work and report back in accordance with the plan. In terms of section 5, page 12, qualifications to the opinion, the only reference here, Chair, relates to the items that will be covered in part 2 of this meeting. And in terms of the next few pages, Chair, really these repeat the progress report, which I just referred to. So we've got the 88% of management responses within 20 days. We're highlighting 1 or 2 areas of work that we're carrying forward into the current year, and we've summarised the amount of contract audit work that we've covered. So I think it's a comprehensive review, Chair. We've been able to achieve pretty much all of the plan, and that's not hindered in producing an overall annual opinion which you're required to receive. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Any member like to make a comment or ask a question? If not, then can I take you to the recommendation at number 2, 2.1, recommended that we note the report, the progress report from the annual report for internal audit. Members, can somebody please move that?
Yes, I'll move it.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sue. Okay, agenda item 14. This is the one Sue Roberts is going to be speaking to. So, Sue, this is the annual governance internal audit annual plan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, although it is the internal annual plan, it's an appendix in the report, but it looks very different to normal, and I just wanted to explain why that is. So this is looking at this year. So normally we would have brought this in March to set out the year ahead. From March, mid-March to now, and probably until the end of August, internal audit have been fully occupied working on the grants process, the business support grants process. So normal audit work or normal assurance work has had to be put on hold for a brief period. But we are now heading towards the end of those grant schemes, but the start of the DWP benefit testing that internal audit perform on behalf of the authority. That's a series of months of work. There's a high volume of tests that have to be performed. So those 2 things combined take up a significant proportion of all the audit days we've got available. Through the period that we've just been through, internal audit were looking to recruit another member of staff, but that has been put on hold. To bring somebody into the team at this point doesn't make sense. But we also lost a member of the team internally within the council, so that's good. They're not lost to the authority, but it's meant internal audit's got almost 2 staff down, and these 2 huge pieces of work that have really limited the number of days available to do like what I would call the assurance work. I do need to give members some assurance though, because we're not saying internal audit is switched off. It's still there, and significant issues are still referred to audit. It's the normal work programme that maybe can't run as it would have done, as we would have liked it to. We're trying to obviously minimise that gap. There was a lot of work that was done start of this calendar year, and hopefully things that could start again in April, although benefit testing will come back again into that cycle of work. But anything that's kind of proposed to change within the significant areas, so they are listed in the plan, although there's no days against them. If there's a significant system change or consideration or proposal, internal audit will still be involved. They still need that assurance around internal control. There's nothing planned to change, but I just want members to be aware that just because a particular area isn't going to be audited as normal, it won't be changing in terms of control without an internal audit view on that. I say that there isn't anything planned, but you never know, do you? So, we have got that contingency in the plan, but it is very much a contingent amount for normal assurance work and not the normal plan as you would see it. I think that's really all I wanted to say, but it is unusual to see the plan with zeros. We don't want to lose that plan, and it is kind of recognising that we have had to divert resources away from this, but still maintain that assurance level. I'm sure that we're not the only authority that's had to move resources around, and we are still keeping our hands on the controls. It is just other work that's taken the resource away from us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Members, would anybody like to comment on that? Well, I certainly would, because reading through this report, you can see some of the areas that has had that pressure placed on it, and we've still achieved coming out of this with a fabulous annual report and a good progress going forward, and still work being done by our internal audit and our head of resources as well. So, where I said thank you before, I just mean that, because reading through some of these reports, you can see the pressure that's been on, and the work is still being achieved. So can you pass that on for us, Sue and Keith? Because, I understand the pressure that's been on to get these, grants coming in, but then they have to make sure that they're going out correctly and we're doing it correctly. So a lot of work going on. So thank you very much for that. Can somebody please move this, the acceptance to note this report?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Callister. Anybody else second it for us, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. So,
Chair, we need a roll call on that one, please, because there is a decision being made. So could I please ask members to answer for, against or abstain? Councillor Burns?
for,
Councillor Aswad?
For.
Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Ronson?
For.
Councillor Shirley?
For.
And Councillor Thompson?
No.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, can I move us on then to agenda item 15, which is going to be introduced to us by John Penfold. This is the restricted assurance monitoring. John, and he's
Okay,
right down
sorry.
there. Okay.
Right. The reason we do the restricted assurance monitoring is to make sure that where the internal audit has made recommendations on reviews that the audit conclusion was restricted assurance, is to make sure that the officers are actually implementing those recommendations. And I report this to the audit committee every quarter, every meeting. At the last meeting, which was December, there weren't any restricted assurance reports. There were, however, 2 no assurance reports, but those are covered in agenda items 26 and 27, which will be under part 2.
Thank you, John. Any questions from members or comments? If not, can I take you then to the front page? Number 2, the recommendation is that we note this report Is that agreed? Can I have someone to move that and second it, please? Councillor Callister's moving. Councillor seconding. Members okay with that? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on then to agenda item 16, which is the risk management report, and I think that's probably John as well.
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
So on a regular basis, I take the risk register to management team. They review it and decide whether those risks are still appropriate, and they can remove risks or add risks, more risk to it. The last time it went to management team was in March, prior to the lockdown. And at that time, the risk register was appropriate. Since then, obviously, other risks have come up and management team have had to make quick decisions, so they didn't go through the formal risk process. So the risk register that is in this report is the one that was pre-March. The risk register will be going to management team again in August, and I've asked managers of the council to provide me with additional risks which have come up because of the COVID situation. And I will present that to this committee in September.
Thank you, Jane Paul. Members, any comments? I would just like to say I think that we're all waited with bated breath to see if we're going to have a second spike of this. And it's certainly got to be part of the risk assessment that we need to do as a council to see where we go with that. I just wondered what other members think about that, because I mean the risk register is quite a live register at the moment, but I think that one has got to be high on the agenda for all of us, worrying what's going to happen. Anybody else?
Director of Resources, Chair, would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have acknowledged that the second wave would be an issue for us, and we've put that, albeit quite lightly, into the risk register just to recognise it for today. It's on in the pack. It's page 87. In the register, it's number 8, so it's 8/20/1. It's under the grouped heading of natural disaster, malicious or accidental incident, so kind of major things. So we've just put COVID-19 second wave. We do need to develop that into the potential consequences and mitigation, but we've sort of flagged it because we know it's something that we need to address. And I think that our business continuity is not really built around a pandemic, so we do need to reflect on that and perhaps have business continuity depending on what type of emergency it is, but that will be developed through the review that John referred to. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? So the recommendation is that we're invited to consider this, and I think we've all done that, because reading through the register there, I picked that one up as well. So I think if officers are going to have a look at this and come back to us in September, that'd be really worth seeing. That I think we all are waiting with bated breath, and we picked that one up as an issue. So thank you very much. So can I have someone to move the noting of this report, please? Councillor Callister moving it, and Councillor Masood seconded. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, members. So, agenda item 17 is the local code of corporate governance. So is this John?
It is, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I realised it was you. I was waiting for you to speak.
All right.
Thank you.
Right, so every year we review the council's code of corporate governance just to make sure that it's still appropriate. There are 7 principles of good governance which are listed, and the way this code is set out is that each of those principles is in alphabetical order and it's highlighted in bold. Underneath there'll be a paragraph to explain what the principle's about. And then there's sub-principles that are under that, and they've got bullet points underneath them, and the bullet points actually demonstrate how we've evidenced that we are actually achieving those principles. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the whole report, but that's the way it's set out to work. A few highlights that have changed since last year is we've reviewed the council plan and that's been published. Underneath that, we're developing service plans to make sure that we achieve the outcomes in the council plan. Under capacity for both members and officers, we've now got a leadership group which is working very effectively. The member development strategy has been reviewed, and we're bringing in external support and consultants for things like the future high street. We're always reviewing officers' skills to make sure that we do have the capacity to do what we need to do. And obviously things have changed now because of the COVID situation. We brought in the Local Government Association, who did a governance review for us, and we're implementing their recommendations. And they also did a peer challenge, and we've got a plan to implement those recommendations. We brought in APSI to look at our waste contract. So we are definitely moving in the right direction. And at the next meeting of this committee, I will produce an annual governance statement to see how we've done against the Code of Governance for last year. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. And it just seems that we've got a list of principles that we're putting in place to make sure that we're getting things done right in this way. And members, any questions for John? And I just wondered if, John, this was circulated to members back in March, which seems like a long time ago, and to just highlight the fact to members again that this is now being produced and they really need to read this and make sure that they're on side with it. So, Debbie, I wondered if you, as head of legal, have any views about whether we should be actually highlighting this to members again.
I may be led by Sue in terms of where it generally goes, but the fact that you're reviewing it and refreshing it today, and it's been updated, and management have had the update side to the updated version as well, and we are keeping it under constant review. Does it go to full council, Sue?
Yes, it does, but as it's kind of delegated, it doesn't go as an individual document, but it could definitely do that, because that's the best way to get it distributed. Otherwise it would be an email circulation. So while we've got the opportunity to send papers out, I suggest we put this in as a full report.
It will also be publicised on the website.
Yeah. So it's just highlighting the fact that members need to get the heads around of this and be aware of the new framework.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it would be for us to get it on the website and then send emails to all members with a link to it, and then they can just go straight into it.
That would be really good. Thank you very much, John. Okay, members.
Councillor Shirley would like to speak.
Okay, Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thanks for this report, Mr. Penfold. I totally endorse it and will be voting for it. I just have a question around the way that we engage with individual citizens and service users effectively. Agenda item 17, page 102. It concerns the motion which Councillor McEwen and I put before Council that was voted unanimously around raising awareness of suicide prevention within the borough and throughout our staff and customers. And I think it's worth noting, Madam Chairman, that the Council has responded exceptionally well to that motion and has conducted a significant amount of work to cover this extremely challenging and difficult topic in a very positive way. So with that in mind, Madam Chairman, I wondered if it would be appropriate to ask for a report to the next audit committee just to bring audit up to date with the work which has gone on to date, so that we can then perhaps share that with maybe the member of the public as well who came to that meeting and spoke at it concerning this topic.
Councillor Shirley, did that member of the public come to full council, not to audit committee? Yeah.
Forgive me, Madam Chair. Yes, he did. It's just really essentially, Madam Chairman, if members could have sight of the good work that's gone on, and if we could have an account of each piece of work a summary, essentially, and what the outcomes have been since that important motion was voted on.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if the audit committee is the proper place for that to happen, or it should actually go from audit committee, we send it to executive to see if they could actually have a look and see, because that agenda item was at full council and it was moved at full council. So I'm just wondering where is the best place for it to be, and where we could look at what's going on. So Sue, would you have an idea about that?
Yeah, Chair, if that's requested by the audit committee, then it can come to the audit committee. That's fine, because it's not a decision like an executive report would usually be. It's just an update, like Councillor Shirley says. It's to know what's gone on, and you've asked first, so I think audit committee have the report.
Wonderful, thank you. That's no problem then. So the next audit committee, could we have an update on how the council has been responding to that resolution that was moved at full council, and to see what issues we've put in place to actually help members of the public when this has been happening. Okay, anybody else?
Councillor Thompson, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest if it don't come to audit, it should go to scrutiny, and then use that path into full council. You know, because well, it could come to let's say it could come to audit first, and then if we're not satisfied with what's been done, well then we can send it on to scrutiny, and they can scrutinise it and put recommendations into the full council.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best idea. It has been raised here, so as Sue said, we're the first one to raise it, so we can actually get that report and some information here, and then we can send it to our scrutiny anyway for them to have a look at, and to send it there to full council about what we're doing and whether we're doing good practice and what's happening. So we're agreeing to that coming here next meeting, Ben. That's fine. Is everyone agreed to that? Yeah, thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So with that, and with that resolution going, can I ask members then please to agree to note report, and have someone to move that for me?
I'll move it.
Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Callister? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. We need a vote on that one as well, please.
Okay.
So, can I ask for for, against or abstain, please? Councillor Burns?
For.
Councillor Aswad?
For.
Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Ronson?
For.
Councillor Shirley?
For.
Councillor Emma Thompson?
Oh.
Thank you, that's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an update of local audit, agenda item 18. And is that Mrs. Roberts? So
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an update on, I've called it local audit because it's really intended to cover the commissioning of audit locally. That's a funny title, but it basically relates to the work that the auditors undertake to provide assurance to be able to sign off the accounts. And members might remember last year's accounts were delayed slightly because there was more work needed to get that assurance level up on really significant items, values that are in the accounts. So the work coming out of last year, it's kind of set out in the appendices, but just to summarise it, there was quite a number of authorities that had to carry out that extra work to get that extra level of assurance, which is required for me to sign and for the auditors to then sign. And that work needs to be repeated each year. Now, it's so significant that it's outside the scope of the original tendered work that was awarded through the sector-led body, the public sector audit appointments. So the report back in March was more asking for a discussion around the extra work and the fees that were proposed. Since that time, things have moved on, consultations have been run, and the fees have been agreed. So the report is now for noting. The additional fees do represent the additional work, and it's very similar to the additional fees we paid for last year's work, because extra work is not just the authority's extra time, it's the auditor's extra time as well, and this is a contracted service. So the report is there for noting. The funds have been moved around. We've had to put those in place because obviously this work is going to repeat over the life of the contract that remains. But this committee is responsible for, well, not responsible, you should know the audit fee, you should know the audit scope. So it's brought for completeness, although it has already been set.
Thank you, Sue. So members, the recommendations is that we note this. Does anybody want to ask any questions or make a comment about this agenda item 18? If not, could I ask for someone to move and second the noting of this report?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Somebody second us. Thank you, Councillor Callister. Okay. Thanks very much. Going to move you on then to agenda item 19, which is external progress report, and we'll call on the external auditors to present their report. Gareth.
Thank you, Chair, and afternoon, everyone. I will just give this the progress report a high-level introduction, and then Chris will take you through the detail, and then I'll take you through the detail of the external audit plan for 1920 as well. Obviously, I think it's important just to highlight to the committee the change in audit manager. Obviously, Richard Anderson has been replaced by Chris, and I'll let Chris introduce himself as he presents his part of the report. It's just to say that at this stage, you know, it's a standard progress report. We give you a slight update on progress and give you some of our sector updates. So at this point, I'll hand across to Chris to take you through the rest of the progress report. Chris?
Gareth. Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth, and afternoon all. Yeah, just to pick up on what Gareth said, my name is Chris Whittingham, and I've taken over as audit manager, and I look forward to working with you. Just very briefly, my background is pretty much exclusively in public sector audit. I trained with the Audit Commission in South Wales, subsequently heading north about 20 years ago. So I've got a range of experience, over 25 years in public sector audit, and I think I'm still working out what I'd like to do when I grow up, but here I am still working as an auditor. So taking you through the progress report, it's in the normal format, albeit it was some time ago, I guess, that you had one of these when the committee last met, and just picking up on a few of the key areas using the agenda pack page numbering. On page 137, we give you an update on progress we made to date, as Gareth mentioned, essentially to update you on progress against delivering our audit responsibilities as your auditor. And we also include a summary of some key emerging issues and developments and national reports that we think will be of interest to members of the committee. Page 138, that confirms that our initial planning and our interim work was completed during December through to March of 2020. And the results of that work and the key risks that we've identified are set out in the audit plan and an addendum that Gareth will present following on from my item. Page 138 also just confirms work that we will undertake in relation to the value for money conclusion, and just touches upon and provides a link for members about a new audit code of practice that has been consulted on and will come into force for future audit periods. Page 139, that again confirms the work that we've done and the work that we will undertake to certify your grant claims and key returns, and also touches upon recent fee discussions and proposals that were mentioned by Sue just in the previous items. I was just going to draw out a couple of issues from the rest of the report with the articles set out on page 140 through to 149. Perhaps unsurprisingly, given the references we've had already, the consequences of COVID-19, in terms of the personal cost to people and staff, the financial cost that the council has to consider and deal with, the impact on staff and logistics, key audit risks, etc., and how work will need to be undertaken under different timeframes are set out. And we've considered those issues, discussed them with officers, and again, Gareth will cover those in our audit plan, as we have identified an additional significant risk to ensure that we give that area sufficient attention and audit coverage. A couple of other reports I wanted just to bring your attention to on page 143 through to 144. Grant Thornton completed and prepared a national report on COVID-19 designed to hopefully help officers and members identify all of the key issues and then to consider appropriately how to assess and report and reflect on the impact of COVID-19. And we've also produced a national report that may be of interest covering place-based growth, interaction with county councils set out on page 147. And then just finally, on page 149, there's an article and reference to the challenges facing the world and work of public sector audit. Public sector audit appointments have commissioned a report in response to, I guess, some growing concerns about the sector, and that has highlighted a number of key issues and findings. Each of those are set out on page 149 and include a lack of experienced local authority auditors generally, issues over the timetabling of councils having to produce accounts and the audit time frame, and the consequential impact that's having on audit firms and the number of firms happy to remain in the marketplace. So I'm sure it'll be watch this space in terms of how public sector audit appointments might react to that. So I wasn't going to say a great deal more. I'm happy to take any questions if members have them. And just to reiterate, happy to be joining you as the audit manager and look forward to working with you and joining you again at further meetings. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris, and a very concise report, and it's interesting reading. I think it hits all the points of today's strange world, you know, the pressure that we're all under, and I think external auditors, as well as all the work that's going on, you know, the pressure's there for all of us to see. So thank you for the report. Anybody would like to ask a question, make a comment? No, can we have then somebody to move acceptance of the report and to note the progress on this report?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Assoud. And Councillor Callister seconding. Thank you very much. So, move us on to agenda item 20, which is the external audit plan. So, Gareth, are you presenting this one?
I am, Chair, thank you. So I think if everyone can turn to pack page 155, I think it's page 3 of the actual report. This just gives a summary of the scope of the audit and where we are. As you'll be aware, as those charged with governance, my overall responsibility is forming and expressing an opinion on the council's financial statements and also giving a value for money conclusion as well. So in terms of taking each of those in turn, in terms of the accounts, it lists here the significant risk areas that we will be looking at. The management override of controls is a standard significant risk that you will see in all audit plans. So that is standard. But the other areas, particularly on the valuation of net pension liabilities and the valuation of land, buildings and dwellings, is areas where there's high levels of estimation and assumptions that go into those figures that ultimately end up in your financial statements. And therefore, they carry a significant level of audit risk as well. So therefore, these are key audit matters and areas of a particular focus during the audit. And then you've also got on pack page 173 an addendum to this audit plan, which as a direct consequence of COVID-19, and Chris alluded to this earlier, that on pack page 173 sets out the impact of COVID-19 and the additional work and procedures that we will have to do as a result of that. So again, that is another significant risk area that we wish to highlight to you. So in terms of going back to pack page 155, materiality set at just under 900,000. And then on the value for money side of our work, we have identified two significant risk areas: the medium-term financial plan and financial sustainability, and the arrangements that you're putting in place during 1920 to secure the council's short, medium, longer term financial sustainability. This is a fairly standard significant risk that you'll see in all local government audits, as you would expect in the current financial climate, which has even been accentuated further by the impact of COVID. But as another risk area, which again is a follow-up from last year, specific to you, is on procurement and contract management arrangements. The committee will recall that in 1819, the value for money conclusion was an overall conclusion that the council does provide value for money, except for in and around the area of procurement and contractual management arrangements. So that is as you would expect, a follow-up to assess where the council is during 1920 on that specific areas. So in terms of the audit fees, I think, Sue again has covered that under item 18 in detail. Just to reiterate the point that that's been approved by PSAA in principle and in discussions with Sue as well directly. There is a significant amount of additional work, and that the fees is broken down on pack page 165, just to give you a further granular look at those areas. Now, again, because of the impact of COVID, things have moved on. So there is one area I do want to highlight on pack page 165, which is on emerging accounting standards. Obviously, originally there was expectations that a new auditing standards in and around IFRS 16 on leases was going to come into effect in 1920. That has now been moved to 2021. So that fee increase will be taken out. But what I do have to say is, as we've already mentioned, with the impact of COVID-19 and having to do the audit completely remotely, it is one of those things that we're going to have to keep under review. So yes, these are the fees as are outlined, but we've just had experience of auditing over 120 NHS clients over May and June across the country, 47 of which are in the north, 6 of which I signed off personally. And Chris will support me in this. It's been extremely challenging, and as it is equally challenging for you on the authority side in terms of Sue and the team producing those accounts, actually doing the audit 100% remotely is very, very, very difficult. So we will endeavour to work to the revised statutory deadlines, but it is to make the committee aware that it is something that we have to work very closely together with Sue, Chris, and Peter has now joined you on the finance side alongside Chris and Hebe and myself to make it happen. But again, we will keep the committee abreast of that if there's any further slippages. But it is a serious quantum of work that it currently lies ahead for us all. Yeah. In terms of the independence, we can confirm that we are independent from the audit, and there's some further details outlined on pack page 166 to give that some further context as to the safeguards we've got in place there. So that is a very high level introduction to the audit plan, Chair, and at this point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gareth, for that very thorough gone through the plan, and we all recognise that we all live in strange times, and it is a very difficult situation that we're in. And I'm going to ask Mrs. Roberts if she wants to respond to anything that you've said there, which is so would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's very different times, and for a period there, doing the statement was okay. What? so we have, as I'll explain in a further report, waited a little bit down the line because resources weren't available, but obviously kept the auditor Gareth informed of where we were, what position we were in, because I'm sure it was different in each authority. And Gareth, kindly allowed me to go further down the stack of their work. There is a risk with that because other audits may take longer than planned, because it's all very different the way it's going to work. As Gareth said, it's different on both sides. Presentation of information is going to be different. Sometimes it's easier to explain things in person or to show things in person. So I'm sure we'll be screen sharing quite a lot and
Absolutely.
exchanging more hard evidence through scanning. And there is a system that Grant Thornton operate that's very easy to pass information across. It might just be a bit more labour intensive. We're just going to have to wait and see. Going that little bit later, we will have some benefit of Gareth's team working with other districts. So, a few lessons learned, but each authority's got its differences. So, we'll keep working closely. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the beauty of local government. We do have other partners that we can actually work with, and other councils we can actually learn from their experience and try and make sure that we're working together, because it is hard. It's hard to do. So thank you for that. Members, would anybody like to ask a question or make a comment about this external audit plan and the report going forward? If not, can I have someone to move we accept this and note the external audit plan?
I'll move it.
Thank you. And Councillor Callister seconded it. Thank you very much, members. And thank you, Gareth and Chris. And no doubt we will see you again. Hopefully we might see you in person. If not, we'll still see you remotely. But thank you for this work as well. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, agenda item 21, the members' code of conduct. And I think Debbie Starr, our head of legal and governance, is here to speak to this report. Debbie.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just by way of background, our councillors adopted the current code of conduct back in 2012, following the implementation of the new standards arrangements under the then Localism Act. And we worked, I recall it because we worked with authorities across Cumbria to get a common code which was common to county councillors, district councillors and the parish councillors at the time. In July 2019, last year, your audit committee, received a report that had been published by the Local Government Ethical Standards Committee in Public Life on the subject of ethical standards in local government. And out of that came a number of best practice recommendations and other recommendations, some of which I will bring to a future meeting of the audit committee. But the report noted that there was considerable variations in terms of codes of conduct which was around the country, and it felt that many codes failed to adequately address issues around bullying and harassment, and also social media, which has raised its head a lot over recent times. So one of their recommendations was that the Local Government Association should create an updated model code of conduct in consultation with representatives bodies. And the LGA are now consulting on that, and this is the draft code that you've got with your papers today. I've circulated it to all members of the council and asked for any comments. I haven't received anything to date. The consultation period runs until the 17th of August, and I'm working with monitoring officer colleagues across Cumbria to produce a monitoring officer response to the consultation. And we hope to work together on any future revision or version of that map which might come forward. The draft code articulates the behaviour which is expected of members. It brings in some new emphasis around civility and protection from bullying, intimidation and abuse. Some of the suggestions may require legislative changes, and the government has not responded to date to the report and the recommendations, so they're ongoing. But the code is really just an opportunity to provide any feedback from yourselves on the draft and to watch what comes out. I think in terms of the monitoring officer views and comments, it's interesting to note at this moment in time it's still down as a model code, which suggests it's not a mandatory code at this stage. And I think that's one of the things we might feedback in terms of, well, you know, if you're going to get consistency, you need to be clear as to whether it's mandatory, but also in terms of the use of the terminology and language and making sure that it's easily understood. Members may not be familiar with civility, you know, in terms of that seems to be a new approach, but that's a piece of work that the local government are doing around civility. But we've in the past looked at respect and disrespect. So those are just a couple of the queries or the thoughts that are coming out around the code. I think on the whole it's welcome. I think it's fairly clear, but could go further in terms of guidance and clarity. And certainly the issues around social media and bullying and harassment need to be worked up and through to help provide further support in those areas. I've sent it to the parish clerks within the borough have also had sight and are awaiting feedback. And clearly this was just an opportunity to draw it to the committee's attention.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm amazed that you're saying it's not standard at this time, that it's just model code. But I think, you know, if we're going to have, it's going to go further than this. If those of us that were around during the Macpherson principles, these standards in public life, know that it used to be something that was reportable and you could be held up for it, and then it was taken out of the system. And I don't understand why that happened. But has this been to a members' training panel? Have members had any training on looking at these guides and these principles about, you know, what this means to us as an elected member?
Clearly, whilst I'm new to post, I haven't been involved in any training around the code since I started, but it's something that will be on the work programme moving forward. And this is purely a draft out for consultation at this stage, so it's likely that it will change. But if it comes into being, then clearly we would bring a report back. And as I say, I'd hope we would work with the Cumbria monitoring officers to get a consistent code across Cumbria, so that those that are county councillors, parish councillors and district borough councillors are operating to the same code.
Thank you. Other members want to add anything?
Councillor Shirley and Councillor Callister, Chair.
Councillor Shirley first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Monitoring Officer, for this report. Like all members, I'm sure I very much welcome this. One almost thinks that when this goes through, members should be encouraged or told that they need to attend a briefing and training session on this, otherwise they won't receive their allowance. Monitoring Officer, I notice in item 3, bullying and harassment, it quite rightly quotes the Equalities Act 2010 and the protected characteristics, which I totally endorse. One wonders that councillors are generally members of a political party, except for those who are independent. And I wondered if there's provision for putting in on the basis of political persuasion or political party membership into section 3, or will members have the opportunity to further feed into this report?
Thank you. Sister, would you like to answer that?
Members can respond directly through the link that I circulated to members. There was a link to the actual consultation. So if members wanted to respond either on a party response or an individual response, then they can do so. In terms of, I'm not quite, maybe just clarify that the point you're trying to make, because the Equalities Act there, are you talking about the reference to the bullying and harassment, or are you talking about interests? Because clearly membership of a political group would be an interest that is registered in any event, as it is now.
May I come back, Madam Chairman? Thank you. So what I'm essentially asking is, in section 3, to not bully or harass any person, defines harassment in the paper against protected characteristics or relating to protected characteristics, and membership of a political party isn't mentioned in there. But I accept your response, Monitoring Officer, and will take up the opportunity to feed back using the link that you've kindly provided.
Mrs. Starr?
That's fine. If you need the link again, just let me know. The deadline for consultation is the 17th of August.
Thank you. Councillor Callister?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just like to say I certainly agree with what Councillor Shirley has said, and I certainly agree with what yourself has said, Chair. Now, I'm again a little bit concerned that we're going out for consultation, etc. Something like this should be presented to us in an all singing, all dancing format. We don't need to worry about what anybody else is doing. We need to be tied down what happens at Barrow Borough Council. And furthermore to that, if I was to suggest to you that given the day and age that we actually work in, and this is directed to the officer that's leading on this, given the day and age that we are actually operating in, given it's social media and plenty of bullying, so to speak, out there against members, what immediate safeguardings can you place to safeguard members?
And that very much depends upon the nature of the offence. I mean, if it's harassment or whatever, then it would be a police matter and the police would be involved. It's very much a matter of fact and degree, but it's a very difficult area, and that's why the Government's Association and the standards are recognising that there's a gap that needs filling in terms of making additional provision to help support the framework and to help support members around that.
I appreciate your answer there. And just furthermore to that, I would expect that this report gets full attention over these next 2 or 3 weeks, and it comes back to the next meeting, as I would like to see an all singing, all dancing document that protects everybody. Thank you.
Well, this, if I may, Chairman, this document is a consultation that's going through the LGA, and they are taking in the responses from the consultation period. They will look at a revised code further, which is likely to end up through their local government association board meeting. So once it is finalised and it will be presented as a model code, then it would come back to council for consideration of adoption.
Sorry, Chair, that's just led me to one further question. So does that mean that we can't, as a borough council, we cannot devise our own set of standards, code of conduct, safeguarding, etc.? We have to go with another organisation. We can't produce our own document.
At this moment in time, the answer is yes, you could produce the document, but the standards regime is changing and the legislation may change around standards. And at the present time, the council is working with a code that it's had since the Localism Act came into being in 2012. And it would seem premature to review it until the work around this model code has been finalised, and then you can take a view in terms of what you want to do. It may be that it becomes a mandatory code. It may remain as a for best practice to adopt at this moment in time, but that will likely be determined, hopefully, in the autumn when it's finalised. But I would certainly bring it back to a future meeting.
Thanks for your answer. I just finish off with saying that we move on this as speedily and as quickly as possible without delay.
Could I ask if there's any further comments from members? Or could I just say, Tony, I think as Mrs. Starr said, this is out for consultation. So if we wanted to put an addendum or put an issue into that, when that consultation it comes from the council, we could put something in there that actually lifts what you've just said, you know, about members themselves being harassed and having something in the code of conduct to identify.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, it just sounds a little bit Norman Collier-ish to myself there, just getting a little bit of lack of clarity with what you're saying. I mean, ultimately, I would just like to think that we move on this quick and there are immediate safeguards for all members, irrespective of political persuasion. But I'm still a little bit of disapproval that we find ourselves waiting on other people. We are a strong enough borough council to be able to create our own document to put down which safeguards all the members. Thank you.
Mrs. Thompson, I think it just come up that my internet connection was unstable. So if I go off, I'll ask Anne to come in now.
Right, thank you. Can I just ask Debbie a question through you, Chair? Is there great differences between our own members' code of conduct, which is in our constitution, and the model one?
I think the main difference is around the introduction of civility, which is a new concept, but also the bullying and harassment isn't specifically in the existing code. I don't think specifically that talks about behaviours, and it talks about the Nolan principles, but it's probably that's probably not quite as explicit as it would be in a new code.
Well, I'm in agreement with Tony here, actually. I think we've got an opportunity before the autumn to actually, before this one's all gone through the singing and dancing process, to do it ourselves and add those bits and the safeguarding and the social media into our own policy, if that's all, and civility, if that's all the difference is. And therefore that could be done through member training and go to the next full council, and then we'll have it in place far sooner. So I'd move that, Chair. We just update our own rather than, you know, wait for this one.
Seconded.
Agreed.
Hold on a minute, I'm chairing this.
Sorry, apologies. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Start.
I suppose my comment is, as members who may also be county councillors and parish councillors, are you comfortable that you're not being consistent across Cumbria? And because do you want to make changes now but then have to change it or change it again further down the line? You know, clearly if you want us to review the existing in terms of adding some additional provisions, then that's something you could put forward and we would look at that. But it's about, I suppose, having the process and the ensuring the consistency.
Through you, Chair, will we be in Cumbria for very much longer?
Can I just hold on a minute? Tony Callister, you had your hand up.
Sorry, Tony.
Thank you very much, Anne. Listen, about this consistency, we're Barrowborough Council. Listen, we are a strong organisation, and I think we need to put ourselves out there as that sort of organisation, and we can do this off our own back. We don't need to worry about what anybody else is doing. It's what we do, and I think we need a strong policy as soon as possible on the desk. Thank you.
Thank you. I've had that moved and seconded, but before we do that, I think what Mrs. Starr is saying, she understands that we can change our policy whenever we want. But the government are still doing this and they will impose it on us unless, and it could be that it would change it all anyway. So I think it needs to go to maybe your members training panel to have a look and see what it is that we need to put into there along with the officers. We can't just do it in a fortnight, you know, we need to actually look at our own code of conduct to see what we need to change, to see if it links in with what we've been offered here as a model. Because this has come from the local government association. It's not come from anywhere else. This is happening all over the country. So it's been moved and seconded that we actually just change the one that we've got. But recognise also that if something else comes from the government and from the local government association, we're going to have to change it all back again anyway. So can we not just have wait for the consultation period to finish, which is only a couple of weeks away, to see what's happening then, to see what's coming forward, and then we could actually look at whether we need to change ours or we need to go to something else. It's just that you know you're going to be setting officers a job of doing more work when it might all change when it comes to August the 17th. Mrs. Thompson.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, to keep going on. But no, because it's not going to finish at August the 17th. That's only the end of the consultation period. So obviously then it's going to take them quite a while to get all the replies all collated and into a document. But in the meantime, our councillors are not protected and not safeguarded from bullying and harassment on social media. And I think if that's an admission in our code of conduct we got now, we need to get that rectified as soon as possible, Chair, because it's in this day and age, that is something highly dangerous for the health and well-being of our councillors.
Thank you very much. So we've had it.
Can I just comment? I mean, in terms of bullying and harassment, this is about members not bullying. It's not about the public interface, and this is about the members' conduct. I appreciate that there will be matters outside where members of the public may be involved, but this is about members bullying. So I just want to be clear that that's members' intention. But also in terms of timing, I mean, your next audit committee isn't until the 1st of October. So, you know, in terms of saying bring it in quickly, we'd have to do a piece of work and we'd have to consult. And so that's going to take time if it's going to go to your next agenda. And do you want to cover the parishes in any consultations as well?
Thank you. Councillor Callister.
I'm sorry on this one, but who do we have to consult here? This is a policy to look after the staff, and even we extend it to look after the officers, etc. It doesn't matter who's going to do the bullying, whether it's bullying within members, within the political groups, or it's bullying outside the town hall. This is a policy that can be on the table, too sweet. I don't think there needs to be any delay. I don't think you need to start consulting with anybody. It's 2020. Well, we're fast approaching 2021. I would expect to see a document on the table that protects everybody very quickly. Thank you.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I totally agree with Councillors Callister and Thompson. It is clear, and my point was referencing safeguarding members against other members, and also making sure that we give members the knowledge and skills that they need to make sure that they don't find themselves falling into the trap of conducting behaviour that's conducive to bullying other members within or outside of their own political party group. But also to protect our staff as well, so that members hold staff to account, absolutely, but work together with staff and aren't putting staff under any undue pressure, bullying or harassing them for a matter of business. So with that in mind, I support Councillors Callister and Thompson's view. If you look at any other organisation that's just as big, if not bigger than Barrow Borough Council, they're able to move swiftly on these matters. It's alarming and concerning that we haven't updated this for 8 years. And I think that we should also look to have an annual review of this through audit to make sure that it is the most up-to-date model, Madam Chairman, and that we're totally safeguarding our staff, members and customers from the evolving situation and the fast-paced moving modern society. Certainly not leaving it 8 years again.
Can I just say, Councillor Shirley, we haven't left it 8 years. We do review the code of conduct, and we do review that on an annual basis. It comes to these meetings and we do that. So it's not that it's not been done. We do have a code of conduct for members, and you know, this is new, and this has come from the LGA. So all I'm saying to you, you know, I'm quite happy you're moving that. But we've got 2 recommendations here. Are you agreeing with the recommendations that are on this paper, or are you changing the recommendations? Because the recommendations asking us to note the consultation period for the model code of conduct and provide any feedback. You want to add something onto that. And we do want to liaise with the monitoring officers county-wide, because this is going on county-wide, as a response to the LGA, because that's what they've asked us to do. And I understand we're Barrow Borough Council, we can get that paper done for the Borough Council very fast. We can do that, but I don't think we want to keep these 2 recommendations out, do we? Are we agreeing with those recommendations and adding a 3rd? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I agree with those recommendations, and there's no problem with that, but I do want to vote on what I've moved, and I want that to take the priority, that we update the safeguarding and the
right,
and the bullying and social media policies in our local code of conduct that's in our constitution at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, Debbie, tell me legally where we go with this. Move the 2 recommendations, but there's been a 3rd recommendation moved. Is that an addendum?
It's an additional. Well, it's an amendment, isn't it? That's come through. So it's to note. I suppose it's an amendment to recommendation 1 that note the consultation, provide any feedback, and request the monitoring officer to look at an update, an interim update. Is it an interim update in terms of safeguarding provisions? So, are members happy that that has been moved and seconded, and that we add that to the recommendation 1? And if that's okay, can I ask Sharon to call the vote? Thank you.
So we've had moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Callister. Recommendation 1, but include request to look into interim update into our own policy, and then recommendation number 2. So can I have for, against or abstain, please?
Chair, please.
Sorry.
Point of order. No, I don't want it to be interim. I want it to be done thoroughly. Go to member training, get them to do it properly and update our policy, not interim. Whatever comes out in the LGA one later on, if we want to adopt some part of that into our policy, we can do so. But I want our policy updated as soon as possible, because at the moment our councillors within their groups and within their other groups are not safeguarded and protected. And it's a priority. So I don't want interim in it anywhere. Thank you. I didn't move interim.
Okay. So can we have that minuted, Sharon, like that?
Yeah, so just to request them to recommendation number 1, but include request monitoring to look at updating Borough Council's existing code.
And then for it to go to member training to keep members updated with that code. Is that okay, everyone?
The code will have to be adopted by the full council, so it would need, but do you want me to take it to member training in draft form before it goes to full council? And do you want it to come via audit committee?
No, I think it can go to member training and then as their recommendations go to full council. Is that okay, everyone?
I'm not sure it can, Chair. I think it needs to come through one of the main committees, I think. Can it go straight, Debbie?
Well, it's a change to the constitution because the code of conduct is in the constitution, and technically that goes through executive committee before it goes to full council.
Actually, that's what I was going to say, because the members training report goes to executive committee.
Yeah,
So
well,
that would go to executive, then on to full council. I don't think we're missing out a trick there. But what we're wanting to do is make sure member training understands what we're doing, and that report will go to full council where it be a recommendation to full council. Okay, is that all right, everyone?
Yeah.
Right, Sharon, thank you. Sharon.
Can I just take a vote on that then, please? I've got, and Councillor Thompson moved recommendation 1 and 2 with the addition to recommendation 1 to request that the monitoring officer look at updating the Borough Council's code and take to member training, which will then continue to council. And then recommendation 2 as is in the report.
Yes.
So I've got Councillor Thompson moved and Councillor Callister seconded. So can I take a vote on that, please?
Yeah.
So Councillor Burns.
4.
Councillor Aswad.
4.
Councillor Callister.
4.
Councillor Ronson.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Thompson.
4.
So that's unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So agenda item 22 is the going concern, and that's Sue. Speak to.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an annual assessment that's carried out in order to be able to present the accounts of the authority, statement of accounts of the authority on a going concern basis. What we're reviewing are the factors that could influence whether or not the council is a going concern. It's probably quite easy to think, yes, we must because we're part of government, but as an authority, we have to look at ourselves to make sure that we have that sustainability and forward view. It's sort of broader than just existing, if you like. So within the report, there are a number of criteria. Management, I assess the management team, consider my assessment, and then I bring it here for members to endorse. I would just like to point out on the appendix, I do apologise, there's no colour in there, and I forgot that we wouldn't have colour. So in the appendix, the bold items that have been added in since March within the assessment column, such as in the first one, it originally said council approved the budgets for 2021. In bold, it now says budgets to be revised during 2021. Obviously, that's a result of COVID and the financial position changing due to that. So all of the bold items are related to COVID or triggered from COVID, apart from the third box down, which says active bids for town deal and future high street fund. Obviously, that's not COVID related, and it was coloured differently in my version, but you can't see that, sorry. So just wanted to really say we have reflected on the going concern because of the ongoing situation, and it has prompted a number of reviews that are on the go now. Alongside that work, there are monthly returns to government to claim emergency funding, which is mirrored in our own budgets, and the sort of impacts of that are built into our finances, or are being built into our finances. Sorry, I haven't finished that work. So overall, myself and the rest of the management team are satisfied that we can prepare the accounts on a going concern basis, and I'm asking members to consider the assessment and endorse that or ask questions.
Thank you. Any member want to make a comment or ask a question on this report? If not, can I move to the recommendations that the Audit and Governance Committee agree that with the going concern assessment? And could somebody please move that for me? Councillor Callister and Councillor Sood seconded. Thank you very much.
Can we take a vote, please, Chair?
Can we have a vote, please?
So, Councillor Burns?
Agreed.
Councillor Aswad?
For.
Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Ronson?
For.
Councillor Shirley?
For.
And Councillor Thompson?
For.
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. Can we move you on to agenda item 23, which is the accounting policies? That would be Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this is another annual report. It's a review of the accounting policies that we use to, as the basis of the accounts and the statement of accounts that will be coming to you soon. And what I do is take last year's, because we've agreed last year's, that's the basis we've prepared on, reflect on changes in the code, reflect on our own practice, see if there's anything needs to be changed, and it is quite a hefty appendix, so I'll just sort of pick the bits out that have changed. We've obviously updated the year because the codes are issued each year, so we are reflecting those dates because we are mindful of the new codes. We consider what's in those. In the report, I have noted what are the significant changes and whether or not there's an impact on our accounts and our policies. There are a couple of specific changes for us. There's a section that's deleted because it's no longer relevant to the statement as presented. It's a policy that closed a number of years ago, so it needs to just come out now. And there's a clarification around overheads to do with the housing revenue account, which is slightly different treatment to the general fund. They're the main changes. Everything else is as last year. If there were to be changes, we would obviously have to look at figures presented in prior periods to show the figures with some consistency, but we don't have that this time. It is just a refresh and a clarification and that one removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members wish to ask a question or make a comment? If not, the recommendations are there that we sign the proposed accounting policies and we accept that. Thank you. Do we need to
have a mover and seconder, please, Anne, and a vote?
Yeah. Tony Caster's moving it and Councillor Sood seconded it. Are we taking the vote?
Yes, please. Councillor Burns?
For.
Councillor Aswad?
For.
Councillor Callister? Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Ronson?
For.
Councillor Shirley?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Thank you, that's unanimous.
Thank you. So, agenda item 24 is the assurance. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Again, another annual report. When preparing the accounts, there are two points where the authority is asked to provide assurances to the external appointed auditor, and there's assurances requested from management, but also from the chair of Audit and Governance, as the committee charged with governance for the authority. So the auditors asked Anne a series of questions, very helpfully provide a template for those responses, which I do appreciate. So Anne and I went through all of the questions, if you like, and they were sort of a challenge set of questions. They're in the appendix, and provided a response. So it is the committee's view of how management provide assurance to the committee. It's presented as the chair's response, but it does need to be endorsed by all of the committee, or the committee as a whole, should I say. There will be a second opportunity to cover that assurance as part of the statement being presented. That'll be at our November meeting. So the report is very brief, but it's really got the request and then the chair's response for members to endorse. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, any questions or queries? And I'm just going to move that hopefully you endorse my response to the appointed auditors, because it's there for you to see. And I've just about signed it. So anybody like to say anything about that? If not, could we have someone move and second the endorsement of that response? Councillor Callister and Councillor Sood. Thank you.
Can we take a vote, please?
Yeah.
Councillor Burns?
For.
Councillor Aswad?
For.
Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Ronson?
For.
Councillor Shirley?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. And agenda item 25, the accounts update, and this is Sue as well. So.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, usually I do a quarterly update of everything, but mindful of the amount of business on the agenda, I've kept it just to the 1920 accounts, which members do need to understand where we're up to. And so my report's attempting to provide some assurance, but explain why we are where we are. So normally the statement would have been prepared and I would have been able to sign that off by the end of May, and the audit would have taken place, and this meeting would be seeing the auditor's report on the statement of accounts. Due to COVID, I keep saying that, sorry, the timetable was shifted. Government shifted lots of dates of statutory returns and also the statutory accounts. So the statement will be prepared by the end of August, and the audit will run until end of November. As Gareth mentioned earlier, that is very dependent on everybody else's audits, the approach to how things are audited, and each authority's ability to respond to that might mean, you know, time slips, we don't know. But at the moment we're planning for August, end of August to close, and to work with the auditors to try and hit that November date for sign off. There are resource challenges. I'm not going to go over it again, but we know we've had to divert accountants into the process of looking at grants, because grants are complex. It's not just apply and out the door. There are lots of considerations, due diligence. We have to report everything back to government that we've done to show that we've kind of obeyed the instructions that were given to us. So the accountants, alongside internal audit, were seen as the most skillful people to do that, turn it around quickly in effect. So that diversion of resources meant that I had to take the advantage of the extended dates, which I've done. So I have drawn in an external resource, an interim resource, to help close the accounts. We had the accounting services manager retired in April. That was planned, and just the ability to recruit during this period has been a bit difficult. So I took the decision to bring in interim specialist support just to get the accounts closed, you know, some support during that process. So we are on target as of today to get closed and get a statement out at the end of August. But normally you would see that coming through today, so I needed to explain why it's actually missing from the agenda. Hopefully we can recruit soon. There are still other pressures on the team. We've got an input to although we don't draw up the huge bids that are on the go, you know, we do have to have an eye on the financial side of that, but obviously that's all going to be done by Friday, fingers crossed. So that will release some resource. So we are on track, but I just needed members to be aware of the current position.
Thank you, Sue. Any member would like to ask a question or make a comment? Well, could I just say then, as chair of this committee, I'd just like to thank the finance officers for the work that they've been doing over this unprecedented at times. I think we can all recognise with the papers today, it's been massive amount of work that's gone on from both the auditors, the external auditors, and the internal and the finance team to keep us on track. I mean, very, very difficult situation we've been in, but it's good to know we've got a finance team that are keeping us as much on track as we can be. So thank you very much for that. And can you pass that on to all of the teams that are working that way?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Sharon, do we need to actually have a vote on that as well?
Just to move and second around, please, and then we can take consensus of the meeting.
Okay, Councillor Callister's moved it, Councillor Sturz second. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, and then can I just say then, thank you all for attending, and that concludes today's part 1. It's also proposed that we now move into part 2 of the meeting, since there are matters to discuss which are confidential and exempt from the public domain. May I please have a mover and seconder that we move into part 2 from this meeting? So Councillor Sood's moving it, Councillor Callister is seconding.
Can I just have Anne, sorry to bother, can I just have a point of order? I will need to leave at 5 to 4. Is it best I don't come into the part 2 or leave at 5 to 4?
No, I think you should come to the beginning of it, Tony. I think it's
okay. I'll second to move into part 2.
Is that agreed by everyone? Thank you very much. So I will conclude today's part 1 agenda, and thank you very much for your attendance.
No answer was the reply.
Thank you very much. And can I just say to officers and members, thank you very much for your attention this afternoon and for sitting and going through a very long agenda, a very complicated agenda in some instances. Thank you for your attendance and safe journey home. Thanks to the officers for all the work today. Thank you.
We don't have to go far.